is Elisa Makowski. I went to Midrashet Nishmat for my gap year in 2017.
Hi, my name is Nachum Goldstein. I went to Yeshivat Har Etzion in 2016.
My name is Helen Stepa, and I attended Midrashet Lindenbaum beginning in the fall of 2015.
Hi, my name is Hannah Ross. I went to MMY in 2016.
Hey guys, I'm Max Engel, and I went to Midrashet in 2017 and 2018.
My name is Lizzie Jansen. I went to Migdal Oz in the year 2017 to 2018.
When I was in high school, I experienced some mental health challenges. I received some diagnoses, and I started taking medication and going to therapy. And by the time I graduated, I felt pretty confident that I was stable and that I was able to keep everything under control. I didn't feel like I needed to do anything to prepare for my year in Israel other than make sure I would have my medication. I did not plan to have a therapist or any external support.
Coming into the year, I was full of motivation, wanting to continue to grow, to succeed spiritually, to continue developing my learning and my tefillah. But over the course of the winter, I started to realize that those thoughts of wanting to develop, of inspiration, of motivation, over time began to grow into thoughts of self-criticism. I was being very hard on myself. I wasn't really able to learn properly or daven properly, because every time I tried to open a sefer, I would say to myself, you're not doing well enough. Those thoughts that I thought in the beginning were coming from a good place, from a place of wanting to improve and to develop spiritually, were in fact rooted in a form of OCD.
I have struggled with mental health and various neurodivergencies essentially since birth, and by the time I began seminary, I had been in therapy for about 4 years and seemed to be doing better. I incorrectly hoped that I would not need mental health support during my gap year. Just because this is meant to be a fun year doesn't mean you don't need or deserve support.
I am diagnosed with generalized anxiety and panic disorder. Going to MMY was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in terms of anxiety. I was terrified in the months leading up to it, and my first few months there was really, really hard. I was anxious, I was scared, I was homesick. I have IBS, and I was genuinely very, very sick when I was there.
I deal with anxiety and OCD, and I had been seeing a therapist years before I went to yeshiva. When I decided to go to yeshiva, I thought that it wasn't necessary to see a therapist, so for the first year I didn't, but I struggled with mental health.
I had seen a therapist in high school and was taking medication for anxiety. So I decided to be really proactive in researching therapists and psychiatrists for when I got to Israel. In the beginning of my year, I was never happier. A real turning point for me was when I went to Poland. I was a really picky eater, and in Poland there wasn't food for me to eat. Also, on the bus we would watch Holocaust movies, and I didn't feel like watching one of the movies, so I watched a movie instead which featured a girl struggling with an eating disorder. In that vulnerable state, I decided I would be like the girl in the movie. When I got back from Poland, I stopped eating meals. I would spend my lunchtime napping or working out, telling myself what I was doing was okay, because a popular diet at the time was intermittent fasting.
When I got to seminary, pretty quickly it became obvious that I needed a little more support. Stopped sleeping. For the first few weeks I was there, I started experiencing panic attacks, which was something new for me.
I did fall into a very deep and messy and difficult depression during my time in Israel.
My friends noticed, and the director of my program noticed that I had lost weight. We decided I should switch therapists to one who specialized in eating disorders. I was told I had anorexia and something called orthorexia, which is an obsession with health and clean eating. Unfortunately, I could not stay in Israel to receive treatment for my mental health conditions. I had to go home, and I think it's okay if the time comes where you're really, really struggling and it's not safe for you to stay in Israel. I think it's okay to accept that decision.
Over time, I was able to learn how to distinguish between thoughts that were coming from a good, healthy, solid place of wanting to improve in a positive way versus thoughts that were just putting me down, and they were rooted in that place of anxiety. And had I known before my year how to be able to distinguish between those thoughts, I think my whole process of change and of development would have been a lot more smooth, a lot more healthy.
I reached out to my family and my psychiatrist back home to kind of talk about what was happening, and then with their encouragement started seeing a therapist and putting in that time every week, showing up to therapy, making sure that I was staying on top of my medications. Having just that support was crucial to my success that year, and it was because of that I was able to stay and I was able to enjoy it.
With the help of a local psychiatrist who ensured that I was consistent with my medication, and with a really strong support group of friends, and of course having my family back home, I was able to stick it out, and I had a really, really terrific year. It was totally worth it. I'm so glad that I stayed.
My gap year was not the best year of my life, but I did make some incredible bonds, and I can honestly say that I would not be who I am today without my experience in Israel. I did actually come home early. I ended up volunteering in a museum, and it totally changed the course of my life. It's okay if you need to come home. It's okay if you need to switch programs. And it's okay if you genuinely do have a blissful, amazing, meaningful year.
To an incoming gap year student, I would say, don't do it alone. The people at your program have seen this before. They know the professionals in Israel. You can be open with them. I would also say it makes a lot of sense that this year is when mental health conditions come up. Talk to your friends. Chances are you're not the only one who feels lonely or anxious sometimes.
My second year, I did see a therapist, and it helped a lot. I want to encourage everybody to see a therapist whether or not they struggle with mental health, and especially the year in Israel where it's many times people's first time on their own and they're finding themselves.
I was able to come out of it and say that not only did I survive, but I had an amazing, amazing experience, and I would absolutely do it all over again, anxiety included.
I'm so thankful for the fact that I was able to find that support and start therapy in Israel. And it really encouraged me to realize that I have control. I have the ability to get myself help regardless of where I am, and it's a lesson that I've taken with me into college. I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to spend a year in Israel learning. I had a wonderful, wonderful time. I made lifelong friends, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without reaching out, without asking for support.